Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about navigating the difficult relationship. From simple disagreements to emotionally abusive behaviors, you deserve respect and kindness. All the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. I'm glad you are here. This is the Love and Abuse podcast, and of course you already know that. You heard the intro. And if you haven't heard this show before, welcome. I won't lie, this is the show that if you are in a terrible or difficult situation and you want to find answers, this is what I'm here for. So I know that many people listening to this show are in a difficult situation or a terrible situation, and they just want to find a solution or find a way to communicate with a person that might be hurting them. So this is what I do. I come back as often as I can and record an episode for you. And I've got hundreds of emails. Believe me, I receive a lot of messages. And I'm saying believe me because if you've written and I haven't responded to you or I haven't addressed it, I apologize. But I do have a lot of emails, and I try to get to the subject matter of the email as much as possible. Just like today, the subject matter today is being in a relationship and then getting out of it, and then being back in that same relationship. So you're in a relationship with somebody, or you know someone, you have someone in your life, whether it's romantic or family or whatever, and then you decide, you know what, they're too difficult, they hurt me, I don't want to be hurt anymore, I don't want to be around this person anymore, I've had enough. I call it a threshold, when you reach that point and you've had enough and you're about to break. And before you break, you tell yourself, this is it. I'm not going to take it anymore. And then you might give an ultimatum. You better change or I'm leaving, or you better change or else, or you just leave, or you break off the relationship in some way. That's a threshold, and it's my term. You can use any term you want, but I like that term because we all have a breaking point. And eventually we hit that breaking point and we say, that's enough. And some people will not reach their breaking point for decades. I've heard from people that have been in a very difficult, very emotionally abusive relationship for decades. And then they finally reach their breaking point, maybe because they've read something, maybe because they've heard a show like this or whatever, and they realize, oh, this is what's going on. Now I know I'm not crazy. Now I know what's happening every time I feel bad or guilty or responsible for things that I know I didn't do. I know I'm trying. I know I'm doing the best I can, yet it still ends up the way it is, and I feel bad all the time. I look at emotional abuse as someone taking advantage of your emotions, taking advantage of your compassion, of your empathy, of your sympathy, of your love, of your support, and twisting it and turning it inside out so it doesn't feel good anymore to be yourself. Your beautiful, amazing, wonderful self that is very likely compassionate, kind, and supportive and generous. All these wonderful qualities that are taken advantage of by people that want what they want regardless of how you feel. That is emotional abuse in a nutshell. Somebody wants what they want regardless of how you feel, and they will do whatever it takes to get what they want. Some do it overtly, some do it covertly. Some do it regardless of how much you cry or suffer or tell them how much you're hurting them, what they might see as complaining or nagging. No matter what happens to you, it doesn't seem to matter. All that seems to matter is they get their way. Now, this doesn't mean they're all bad people. I know some people out there think the person they're with is a bad person. That might be true, but not all of them are bad. Some of them just have very poor coping skills and very poor empathy or no empathy. They're not even practicing or using it. If they have no empathy at all and they're not capable of it, they could be sociopath or psychopath, and hopefully you're not with somebody like that. In fact, if you've seen compassionate moments in them, then maybe there's a chance. I hear that all the time. Is there a chance that this person will change? And my answer is always, if they admit that they are hurting you and they need to stop, and they admit that they have a problem, if they admit these things and they say, I really want to stop and I will do anything it takes to stop, then yes, there's a chance. The problem often lies when the emotionally abusive person wants to change and wants to heal, is that some of them will want to stay in the relationship while they heal. In fact, almost everyone I've talked to that wants to heal has uttered those words. I want to stay in this relationship. I want to keep my relationship while I heal. That is also possible, but there has to be some major changes. The people that have gone through my Healed Being program, the program that helps emotionally abusive people change and heal, have had to face themselves really and realize that who they've been and how they've behaved probably most of their life is wrong. It's just they have to accept that the behaviors they've been doing are wrong. And when you're an emotionally abusive person and you've been doing this all your life, you may not even know that what you're doing is hurtful. You just think that this is the way it's supposed to be. This is who you're supposed to be. And that may sound ridiculous to any victim of harmful, hurtful behavior. I know it does. But there are people out there that do this kind of behavior and don't even realize it's wrong. And one of the questions I'm also asked quite a bit is, why would they do this if they loved me? I hear that a lot. Why would they do this if they loved me? And I talked about this on a previous episode, but the answer is because they believe they're right. That is it in a nutshell. They believe they're right. For many, many years, I believed I was right in the way I treated my partners in the past. I believed I was right, and no matter how depressed or unhappy I saw them, I just attributed it to their own actions and own behaviors, and I didn't realize that I was doing that. I just asked myself the question, why don't they just do what I tell them to do? Then they'll be happier. I was completely clueless, and I'm not saying that to give myself a break. I'm not saying that because I want you to see me in a positive light. I'm saying that because this is what happens. There are people out there that are clueless that they are hurtful, and they believe they're 100% right about their behaviors and saying what they say to the people that they're hurting and doing what they're doing to the people they're hurting. They believe that their actions are justified. And when the other person is down or hurt from something that the emotionally abusive person did or said, that person doesn't see that they did anything wrong, and they see that the victim of their hurtful behavior is only hurting themselves. And that's, again, sounds ridiculous. I know most of the people listening to this show probably think that's ridiculous. My unhappiness is a direct result of their behavior. How could that be? Because some of them don't have any clue that they are the problem in the relationship, that they are causing the issues, that they are hurtful. They just think they are right and that this is the way you're supposed to communicate with people you care about. And yes, there are some people, maybe many people, that know exactly what they're doing and don't care. Some people know exactly what they're doing and don't care. They don't care if you don't like it because they're going to control you, they're going to manipulate you, they're going to deceive you, they're going to lie to you, and it doesn't matter to them. Those are the people you have to be very careful around, because if your pain, your suffering, your unhappiness doesn't matter to them, I'm going to say it, you shouldn't be with them. You shouldn't be around people that don't care about your happiness and don't care about your sadness. And I know that involves maybe a complex set of variables to get out of a situation like that for some people. But that is something you have to know, something you have to find out. Do you care that I'm happy or not? Do you even care that what you said hurt me? Do you care that what you said makes me afraid? Does that matter to you? Those kinds of questions reveal answers that I believe you should know. And if you don't want to know these answers, I don't really want you to live in denial, but I believe you should know the answer. One woman told me that she asked her partner, "Do you realize that what you're doing is hurting me?" And the partner said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, why are you doing it?" And he said, "Because it's fun." Or something like that. And what? Who would do that because it's fun? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me either. And I teach this stuff. I talk about this stuff all the time. But for somebody to say that, that really reveals what's going on under the hood. That reveals a lot. And as soon as she found out, she had her answer. That's the kind of question you ask if you want the answer. I mean, let me rephrase that. You may not want the answer, but you should know it. You should know the answer to the question, do you realize that what you're doing is hurting me or making me sad or making me afraid? Do you realize you're doing that? So that is a very important answer to have. That is information that you need to move forward in a direction. Because a lot of emotionally abusive relationships, they involve confusion. What do I do? I'm not sure what to do. Is that person going to change? Did I make that mistake? Did I cause the problem? Did they do it? I'm not sure. But sometimes all it takes is a few questions. All it takes is to ask a question like, do you realize what you did just hurt me? Or do you realize what you're doing is making me feel bad? Just simple but hard to ask questions that are going to reveal a lot. And it is sometimes hard to ask a question like that, because what do you do when the answer comes back that isn't favorable to you or the relationship? What do you do? Because that could be it. I mean, once you have that answer, you might have to take a big next step. But I still believe that it's always important to find out that answer. And hopefully you get the truth. Hopefully you are with somebody that gives you the truth. If they are known for lying, I don't know what to tell you. Expect more lying. That's all I can say. If they're known for lying, they probably won't stop lying. Now, getting back to the original topic, you are in a relationship, then you're out of the relationship, then you go back to them, and then maybe you leave again and then you go back, or maybe they leave and they come back. I received a message like that once. She said, "He promised me he would change, and I felt really good in myself. We'd been split for a while, and I did a lot of personal growth, a lot of healing, and I knew in my heart that if the old behaviors came back, that I could just say no more and kick him out or whatever. I knew that I could do that, so I decided to take him back." And she said, "I watched his behaviors, and after a few months, everything was okay, but around 6 months, the old behaviors started coming back." And then she brought it up and said, "Nope, this can't happen." And I think they split up again. And then she decided maybe he has changed again. And his mom said that you should give him another chance. When other family members give their input about somebody that they've known all their life, and now they're trying to pawn that person off onto you. That's not fair, but that can happen. There can be family that see the person in your life completely different, because they're not going to be treated the same way as you are, because she had him as a romantic partner and they had him as a member of their family. Doesn't mean he wouldn't be abusive to the family either, but it more often happens to the romantic partner. And that's why the family doesn't see the same things that the romantic partner sees. Happens a lot. But sometimes family knows who they're dealing with. And sometimes family just wants him to be in a happy relationship with a nice person. And maybe he'll change because that person's so nice. That's why I said pawning off. It may not be their intention to pawn him off. It may be their intention to see him happy. And they believe if he's happy, he'll change and stop hurting the people he cares about. But in the case of that message I received, her primary concern was the guilt. Now I'm dealing with his mom, and his mom says he'll change and God will help him change and just give him one more chance. And she said, I already gave him one more chance, and this is how I got into this mess in the first place. And it's just a terrible situation to be in. But she was dealing with guilt. The guilt that comes up because we see a nice side of many abusive people. We see the kind side, the caring side. They come out. Those sides come out when they're not being hurtful because they're usually in a better place inside themselves where they're not trying to seek or do something selfish. When they don't need anything in that moment, they're probably nice. It's like my stepfather. He was always nice and kind and caring when he wasn't drunk. When he was drunk, I wanted nothing to do with it. Nobody wanted anything to do with him. He would throw things. He would smash things. He hit my mom a few times over the years. It's just an awful, awful situation. Very toxic environment. And to weigh the good with the bad and ask yourself, is the good worth the bad? That's an important evaluation to make. Is the good enough to override the bad? In my personal experience, if that were the case, if my stepfather was drunk once every month, that would be amazing. But if it happened, could I handle it? Probably, but I'm not in the same type of relationship. If I was his wife, my mom at the time, and I was getting abused, one time is all it would take. But that's hard to say when you're not the person in that situation. I can say that now from my place of feeling empowered, feeling like I can control my life, I can make decisions for myself. But someone who's a victim of abusive behavior doesn't feel that way. A lot of them don't feel that way. They don't feel like they can make these decisions. They don't feel like they have any power. There are a lot of victims out there that don't feel like they can make decisions for themselves. They feel like they're under someone else's control. And they also feel like they don't have enough resources themselves. They don't feel like they can get through the situation. They don't know what's going to happen. I remember talking to my mom and her sharing with me that she never left because she was scared. And she never really defined scared, and I had to figure it out for myself. She was scared of what he might do. She was scared of being alone. She was scared of what's on the other side of being single. Like, what does that even mean? Because she hasn't been single for a long, long time. I mean, 4 decades. There's just, there are a lot of unanswered questions that some people aren't really willing to find out the answers to. And that can hold a lot of people back as well. But when you work on your self-esteem and your self-worth and your self-confidence, and you start building that up to take courageous steps, then you start to believe you can do these things. You start to believe that when you reach your breaking point, when you reach your threshold, you can make decisions that you know are good for you, that you know are healthy. And so let me bring this back and sort of wrap this up. This person said that she felt guilty. And I've talked about guilt. I have another episode. I think it's called 6 Reasons You Might Feel Guilty for Leaving the Abuser over at loveandabuse.com. You can listen to that. But I'm going to address this one aspect of guilt that I don't think I addressed back then. She felt guilt when she thought about maybe disappointing his mom and not giving him enough chances. And this guilt comes up, and she associates the guilt with disappointing others or not giving others a chance. That's her association. And a lot of us do this. I do this. We associate the guilt with something that we believe we're doing to somebody else. You feel guilty when you believe you're doing something to somebody else. But I'd like you to view guilt a little differently. I'd like you to associate guilt with not wanting to be hurt. And what I mean by that is asking yourself the question, should I feel guilty for not wanting to be hurt by that person? I want you to think about that, because what it does is it narrows down what we associate guilt with. And I'm talking about in the context of feeling guilty for not giving someone another chance or wanting to leave them. That's the context of what I'm talking about now, is the guilt in that context. And when we associate guilt with not wanting to be hurt by another person, what we end up doing is excluding whatever else guilt has meant for us. Guilt used to mean that I would feel bad because they're sometimes nice to me. Guilt used to mean that I would feel bad for disappointing their family. Guilt used to mean this, guilt used to mean that. And so I'm asking you to see guilt in a way that you associate it with not wanting to be hurt by another person, using the question, should I feel guilty for not wanting to be hurt? Should I feel guilty for not wanting to experience that behavior? Should I feel guilty for those things? When you ask yourself that question, using guilt in this context, associating it with not wanting to be hurt by another person, you filter it down to a very specific thought process, a very simple, single thought. And that thought is, should I feel guilty for not wanting to be hurt by another person? Because when we think of guilt, when guilt comes up, all these other images come up, all these people and situations and feelings and emotions about you and them, and all this other stuff comes up. But let's just filter that out and ask ourselves, should I feel guilty for not wanting to be hurt by another person? And then that will be the answer to your guilt question. You should know that answer. You should know that answer. Because they should be asking themselves, should I feel guilty for hurting that person? This keeps it in the context of hurt and being hurt. And that's it. And it also keeps it in your ballpark, just as it keeps their guilt in their ballpark. Because as soon as you introduce your guilt into other people's ballparks, for lack of a better term, you can't rely on someone else changing for your guilt to dissipate. Let me rephrase that. If you feel guilty because you believe they may change, but they never do, then what happens to your guilt? It never goes away. Your guilt can't rely on whether they change or not. And if they don't change, then by the logic I'm using right now, if you feel guilty that they may change, but they don't, then your guilt never leaves. It never goes away. It's a reliance on what they do next in order for your guilt to heal. If you feel guilty, you need to heal from that guilt. And healing involves taking the right steps for you, taking action in your life, moving in a direction that shows that you love yourself. Because if someone is incapable of loving you the way you deserve, then you need to take those steps. And when you do, this puts your focus solely on yourself. It doesn't exclude them necessarily, because they can do the same thing for themselves. If they feel guilty, they can work through it and they can work on it. If they feel guilty for hurting you, which I hope they do, they can work on that. But that's their guilt. And now you have your guilt. And when you make your guilt about you, about not wanting to be hurt, suddenly that guilt changes. It transforms into something different. Because soon you're going to realize, why would I feel guilty for that? You were probably waiting for me to say that, and it's true. You shouldn't feel guilty for that. Why would you feel guilty for not wanting to be hurt? That's why I'm saying if you make it about that, guilt has a really good chance of dissipating on its own. They can deal with their guilt. They can deal with their issues. They can deal with whatever they need to work on and heal in themselves, while you tell yourself, I don't deserve that. I don't deserve to be hurt. And I don't need to feel guilty for something I didn't do. And if you think you have a part in being hurt and a part in being the victim of emotional abuse, this is going to take you away from that too. It takes you out of that equation, because while you're focusing on yourself, I'm going to focus on what I need to do for me. I'm going to remind myself that I'm lovable, that I'm worthy, and that I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be treated like this. I don't deserve to feel this way. I mean, let's just say that you can't figure out why you're always feeling hurt or sad or confused. If you can't figure it out, something's going on. So focusing on yourself and working on yourself and reminding yourself that you are lovable and worthy, and reminding yourself that someone who loves you, wants to see you happy, is going to give you the direction that you need to go. Someone who loves you wants to see you happy. That's the bottom line. Stay strong. I hope whatever you're going through, you can heal and move through it with grace and ease. Thank you for joining me today, and share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook helps you pinpoint exactly what's going on in your relationship, outlining the behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad. Take the assessment in the workbook and gain clarity on what your next best steps are. After you purchase the workbook, you'll get an invite to the private peer support group on Facebook. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. And if you discover that you are doing the hurtful behaviors to someone that you care about and you'd like to change that about yourself, sign up for the Healed Being program over at healedbeing.com. You can take the course on your own at your own pace, or join the optional private online group where I and others will give you direct support. It's time to stop making those you love feel bad. Go to healedbeing.com. And if you're looking for a safer way to listen to this show where all the titles to the episodes are changed, click on the Safe Listening button on the podcast page over at loveandabuse.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. We'll talk again soon.